So without further ado, Chairman, I'll pass to you. Just as a reminder for everybody, we need to finish sharp at 6:20. So wherever we are, we'll be banging the gong at around 6:20. Chairman.
That's great. Thank you very much indeed, John. And thank you very much indeed to everyone for coming. I appreciate after that slightly stressful experience that we've all been through, that many people will have decided to go home and have a couple of glasses of wine or something else. Just to say thank you also to John and to some of my fellow directors. John at the end is relatively new to the firm, as it were. Most people know Martin, who our chief executive. David Felwick, who fulfills the role as Senior Independent Director, so his job, amongst many others, is to try and keep me under control, which he strives to do. And Peter, I think most of you probably know as well. After that slightly stressful experience, delighted to have the opportunity to talk to you today. What I was going to do is just have a brief introduction I'll run through. John is going to compare a Q&A after that, and it is John's responsibility, not mine, with all my friends on the internet, that if there is any internet question missing, it is John Back's fault and not James Brent's, because otherwise I'll be in trouble. Some of you might be asking what's this new badge is. I can probably get some more made. It's a Brent Out badge, so what I thought I'd do, if there's sufficient demand, is I'll get some printed and we'll sell them for £10 each and give the money to the Youth Academy to develop our youngsters. When we get onto the Q&A, if everyone could use a microphone, because we are recording this and it will be available and no one will be able to hear the questions if we don't use a microphone. So in terms of the football, I mean, you guys watch as many games as I do, I'm sure. You know, really delighted to the best start to a season for 65 years, the best run of results up until today since 2003-2004, and that's with a squad which was put together. The combination of the playoffs and the fact that we had a significant change around the squad means that it's a squad which had only been together for a very short period of time. We all know that Exeter City is just another 3 points, but notwithstanding that, the joy that I had, and it's a great environment, the Royal Devon and Exeter. We're probably the biggest employer of Exeter City fans, and they torture me when we lose, which isn't that frequent, thank God. And I'm not allowed to torture them, but I can be a little bit smug when we win. So I went in on Monday with a big smile, and that was sufficient, I think. The view I think that the board has of the team, and you've seen them yourselves, I mean, they are a strong team, but they are willing to play football. It's not a League Two hoof team. We have intentionally strengthened the team. There was clearly a challenge we had last year over Christmas where we had 6 or 7 injuries of first team players and we weren't able to fill in the gaps with equivalent strength. So the intention is really to have 2 teams so we can substitute in players and provide competition for every position. And all but 2 of the 24 squad, the first team squad, are contracted. As I say, we had 60 new signings, including the 2 new loan players. I mean, obviously Craig was coming back, and the fact that they are still gelling and we've achieved the results we've achieved, I think really is very, very exciting. And you know, that's not by accident. It's nothing that I do, or frankly, that directly that anyone on this table does. We have a great manager in Derek Adams, and he has got a great coaching team, and what we're seeing on the pitch is a combination of what they have scouted and what they've coached and what they're driving forward. So I think Derek is a huge asset to the club, and delighted that he agreed to extend with us, to be with us for another 4 years. We've always been very clear as a board that Plymouth Argyle is about the first team. We absolutely need to get the first team right. You know, that is what will drive us up the leagues, and so there's absolutely no question that needs to be our priority. But it's not just about the first team, and it's great to see what a good job Kevin Hodges, most played player, as a manager of the first team, is now doing with our youth. And we're now spreading his talents, of course, not just across the youth, but across the reserves. We've got, very much as part of Martin's efforts, we have our Plymouth Argyle reserves, which isn't necessarily the ideal level of football for our players to be playing in reserves, but it does give them a regular game of adult football. And we're delighted by the performance of the reserves, delighted by the performance of the under-18s, and we had a board meeting yesterday, and there were some challenges to the use of the word ladies for women players, but I mean it's great to see them giving extra good thrashing as well as the men earlier this week. Again, different clubs have different approaches to their academies, not saying any are right or wrong, but for Plymouth Argyle, the primary reason we have an academy is to develop talent for Plymouth Argyle. We will sell players, that's inevitable, but we don't have an academy in order to sell players. We're developing our own players. But the principle which Derek has, 100% supported by the board, is our homegrown players need to get into the first team because they are the best people to fill a slot. They don't come in because they are Plymothians or because they've been developed by us. And it's great to see, I think, Ben Purrington, really earning his shirt, not being given it because he's an extra lad, as we know, but he's from our academy. And we don't have enough time to give them full credit now, but Argyle in the community is again an incredible asset of this football club. We have more people focused on engagement, health and education of youngsters in Argyle in the community than the whole of Plymouth Public Health. I mean, that's an extraordinary statistic, and the number of young kids and others that we support and help is just, and we don't talk enough about that. I think there should be real pride about what that group of colleagues does. There's been quite a lot of discussion recently about the supporters groups and about a bit of an issue with the AFT. I mean, from the board's position, our board's position is really clear. Our door is open. When the AFT wants to engage, we are really keen to engage. But they don't have an exclusive position in that. We will engage with all of the supporters groups. It's not just an AFT right. We will engage with the Plymouth branches, the other branches, with the senior greens, with the green taverners. And frankly, many of those groups do so much that is positive for the club, and we don't get the opportunity to thank them sufficiently. There's a question that has been emailed in on the internet about the green taverners and asking for reasons that I don't fully understand. How much have they lent the club to pay back administration debts to staff members, and when's that going to be repayable? The Green Taverners, supported by everyone in this room and hundreds of other people, have raised money for the benefit of the club. They are to be celebrated. I mean, they are brilliant people. They lent the club £87,500 so we could accelerate the payments that were due to members of staff who'd gone without pay for 9 months. That is a wonderful thing the Green Taverners have done for our club and for our staff. And I think, there's nothing but pride that I have in what they do. So the answer to that question, and I don't, if I'm honest, trust the motives of it, £87,500 they lent us to accelerate the payments to our staff, and that money is a loan which is repayable in accordance with the terms of that loan. So I hope that answers that question. As I say, the great opportunity of the question gives me, whatever the motives of it is, that I can say thank you to the Green Taverners in a public forum. And thank you also, as I say, to the senior Greens, to the various branches that we have that do so much for the club. What we also want to do, and again this may be an issue for some, is we want to engage with the fan base direct. We don't feel that we need to have people interposing themselves between us and the supporters, and so it's great to have opportunities like this. It's great to be able to get out to the various branches to engage with the AFT if they start to re-engage, but that is not the exclusion of this. This is what really counts to us, is being held to account, not by the AFT. I'm really happy to be held to account, but I want to be held to account by the fans that turn up at football games home and away. Stadium grandstand and infrastructure, a new piece of news. The board met yesterday afternoon And as I say, we approved the buyback of Home Park. Home Park will again be an asset of Plymouth Argyle Football Club. I think it is, I get challenged when people say it's a no-brainer, but that is an absolute no-brainer. The football club will not have to pay out a minimum of 3.7 million, and most probably around double that by virtue of owning its football club. The question is, how are you raising the money? Is it going to be debt? Is it going to put a burden on the club going forward? No, it's not. The repurchase of the grandstand will be funded by the issue of what are called irredeemable ordinary shares. So those shares will never be repayable. In 1,000 years, they won't be repayable to the investors, and they won't get any dividends or interest or anything else. It is as close as you get to a free gift, if you like, from the investors to the club. Now, if the club's ever sold, then the fact that we own our own grandstand will make the club more valuable, but it won't impact on the cash that the club has to spend on players or indeed anything else, investment in infrastructure, save to the extent that that we've got the benefit of not having to pay rent to the council once we exercise that. There's a question that has been sent in by the internet as to how the shareholdings will change. I will be taking up the whole of my entitlements. My shareholding and commitment to the club will not diminish, which is about £1 million putting in to the club, and that is because I have faith in the club. It is not because there's no profitable development opportunities at Argyle. I believe it should own its own stadium. I'm putting my money where my mouth is, and Simon Hallett and the other directors to a lesser degree than Simon are putting their money where their mouth is. So this is a vote of confidence in Plymouth Argyle. It is putting additional money in to support the performance of the club. As a consequence, some of the investors, the other investors, won't take up all of their shareholdings, and Simon Hallett will take up the balance that is not taken up by others. There's a question which is going to come up, and sorry, John, if I'm stealing a bit of your thunder, as to how I will prove that the infrastructure will improve by virtue of ownership of the freehold. I mean, I can't prove that I'll get to work when I set out in my car each morning. I've got an evidence base which sort of tells me that I've done it quite a few times and I haven't killed myself yet, so the balance of probability is that I'll get there. So we can provide plenty of evidence, and I can bore anyone who wants to be bored by it as to why the probability is materially greater that if we own our own home, that we will invest in our own home as opposed to renting. And again, there's piles of evidence to prove that. Well, not to prove it, sorry, I'm getting caught in that. To provide evidence of the fact that it is likely. The current facilities are not acceptable. As part of the board meeting yesterday, Peter and his colleagues took us through, and clearly Peter's not an outsider, but some of his colleagues are new to Argyle and to football, looking at where the challenges are for us to take this club to the next stage. There was a phrase, and they went round and interviewed a number of directors and senior managers and other people around the club, and there was a phrase, and I don't know where it came from because they're very discreet and refused to tell us, but there was a phrase which sort of rings true with me, which is when we were last in the championship, we were not really a championship club. And I think that probably rings well. The facilities that we had as a club did not match the status we had as a championship club. So there's lots and lots of things that we need to address. We have focused, and again, I won't make any apologies for it because we all know there are choices in life. It was really important to Derek that we invested in the football pitch and replaced the surface of that, and that we invested in new training facilities. The training facilities are not by a long way the best in this league even, but they know are going to be the best training facilities that Plymouth Argyle has ever had. And that was really important. That cost £200,000, which, again, if you say it very quickly, doesn't sound like a lot of money, but £200,000 is quite a bit of money to put in. There's a bunch of other things. There's a very, very long list. Martin and colleagues have produced a list to scare the hell out of us as to what we need to do in terms of investing in the infrastructure of the club. The next board meeting is prioritising those. For those of you who can't hear the announcements, the The PA system, we've worked out what's wrong with it, and we are putting that investment into it to get that right. And as I say, there is a new maintenance program that's being agreed. So the next chapter, Peter articulated very well, because Peter's quite a fluffy guy, he's a marketing guy, and he talks in this sort of language that sounds very poetic, but none of us really understand. But he was talking about chapters in a book. We're a club which has been around for a fair few years and has had many chapters, and the last chapter that we've been through, if you look at 5-yearly periods, has been a period of survival, recovery, and sustainability. The club, and I'm not looking for sympathy or praise, but the reality is I've never seen a more bust company than Plymouth Argyle Football Club was when we took it over. And it has taken time to do it, and the support of the Green Army in supporting us to those first 2 years were horrific for all of us. And the core fan base turned out to watch the most dreadful football in driving rain, and as we struggled to survive in the Football League. And when I first became involved, now I'll mention his name because I'm sure he wouldn't object. I saw Neil Warnock even in the boardroom, and he said, Chairman, can I give you 2 pieces, and I didn't know Neil at that time, can I give you 2 pieces of advice? And so I said, yeah, I don't know anything about football, really, really helpful. And he said, the first thing is you mustn't get relegated to the conference. Whatever you do, you mustn't get relegated to the conference. And at that point, we had 1 point out of the first 27. And I said, okay, thanks, Neil. I probably worked that out, but thanks. What's the second piece of advice? And he said, you don't stand a chance not getting relegated to the conference, Chairman. And so it was some really dark times, but we I think, built the club, and I hate the term authentically, but it is a really authentic club. We didn't take the easy route of just chucking money at it. We've grown from the balance. All of those legacy issues are addressed. We repay the last football creditors in October, and the cash is burning a hole in the bank to fund that. We've clearly cleared out. We inherited a load of onerous contracts in terms of footballers. We had 36 footballers when we took over the club. Most of them didn't play here, and most of them were on weekly wages that I couldn't believe. I was convinced when they were presented to me that they were monthly numbers, and they weren't. They were weekly numbers. So all of that is sorted out. I think really importantly, in sparing this man's blushes, we have good leadership on the pitch, and we have good leadership off the pitch to take us forward. And sparing my other colleagues' blushes, we have a very good quality board that is absolutely focused on what everyone in this room is focused on. So, really, really excited by where we're going now. We're clean, we're fresh, we've got money, and we want to take this club forward. Now, that is not, as Simon and I are in exactly the same place, and I think the rest of the board is, we don't want to fund losses for the club. That's what happened. Well, we didn't fund the losses, we just incurred the losses and didn't pay them, went bust. We're not going down that route, but we do want to invest in the infrastructure to see this club taken forward to the next level. There's a question that we debate at the board, which is, in terms of the football, I don't think football clubs generally are well led. I see other organisations that are, on average, better led than football clubs. So we don't want to be a well-led football club. That's not the ambition. We want to be an exemplary club where people look to us and say, that is, and this is not looking about League Two clubs or even English Football League clubs. This is across the football pyramid. We want to be like Plymouth Argyle in the way that we operate. And so we are bringing greater professionalism into the way in which we manage the football club. And the meeting yesterday, the board meeting yesterday, was probably, again, one of the most positive that I'd had. We have had to spend a lot of board meetings talking about, where the money's going to come to pay all the bills across the year. The board meeting yesterday, I think, was focused 99.9% not on what happened last month, but what's happening going forward. So it's really good. Now, this is the bit that's going to get me in trouble. I've warned the 2 of my 5 children who get internet access not to read it for a couple of days, because I'm sure that some of my internet fan club will respond to it. But it's a really serious issue. We are really proud of what we're doing in this football club. So I say there are things that I don't think I probably know about what's happening in Argyle and the community, in our youth setup, in the way that our football players go out and bring happiness to people that are acutely unwell in Derriford Hospital and so on. We are a brilliant club, not just a brilliant football club, a brilliant institution. And we want to showcase that to more people. You know, we do have an imbalance of a gender imbalance in the club. Women who come and watch Argyle play, who come in through that door, a large number of them want to come back and watch the next football game, and yet we're not. If you look at the gender balance in this room, if you look at the gender balance in the club, we haven't got enough women in the club. We need to, our senior greens I mentioned, they are the most fundamentally wonderful supporters of this club, but we do need the youth to come in. If you look at those of you who went to Fratton Park and you looked at the age demographic of Fratton Park relative to Home Park, they've excited their youth, they've brought them in, and we do need to, so we need to bring more women into the club, we need to bring more young people into the club, and this is to drive us sustainably up the league. And as I say, we have so much that is positive. The football is coming together, I think. The grandstand is a challenge, and I'm sure I'll have some questions on that, both within the room and on the internet. But we are putting investment back into the club, both on the pitch and off the pitch. And this is a really caring, passionate, compassionate, generous group of people. The Argyle fans are wonderful. And this isn't just me saying it because I'm sort of proud of what we have. A very, very experienced football person who's been around almost every club in the Premier League and Football League. He tells me that our fans are by far and away the best fans he's come across in any club in England. So why do I sort of rabbit on about that? And it is because we have some serious challenges, I think. Young people, and indeed middle-aged people and quite a lot older people, look to engage initially with a club like ours through the internet. And what do they see when they come onto the internet? They see poisonous, nasty challenges. And if I came on to the internet, I would see Argyle as being a nasty place, not a place of, passionate, compassionate fans who are driven to drive their club, their city and their region forward. And so if social media is the shop window that we reach out to those fans, we need to collectively work out how we take the nastiness out of it. And all the advice I've received is don't take on the dark shadows of the internet, because all they'll do is they'll vilify you and pull your hair out and so on. But I don't believe in that. I think we, as a group, the fans of Plymouth Argyle, need to let the world know through social media what a great place, what a great community we are. I think I'm sure some people hearing this will say, well, that's because he doesn't like being challenged and he doesn't like people saying he's an incompetent chairman and so on. That's absolutely not the case. I'm really keen on constructive challenge. People who say, could you do better? The reason we are really focused on the internet, on our stewarding, on our kiosks, is because we get feedback that says it's not good enough, get it right. Yeah, that's really, really good stuff. So I welcome constructive criticism, the board does. I actually fully accept fair criticism, and I don't regale against unfair criticism. So, if people think I'm an incompetent chairman and unfit to chair their club, that's actually fine. I don't have a problem with that. What I have a problem about is that if, for example, without Chris Webb nagging me to take on the club, I would not have got involved with Argyle. Fact. If I had not got involved in the club, this is not an ego thing, Plymouth Argyle would have ceased to exist as a club. That is a fact. And to see Chris being abused, not because he's an incompetent president, but being abused because he's a friend of mine, is just absolutely unacceptable. And it's unacceptable to everyone in this room, I'm sure, and we just need to get that. So what I'd really like to challenge us to do as a group is, what can we do, as I say, not to reduce the challenge, not to shout names of people who wear my own badge of Brent out. That's acceptable. But the people who are depraved and use depraved language, someone showed me a printout from a Facebook account that said that I had the face of a child abuser. My children on Facebook. Is that what we want people who look, and that website is called the ARGYLE Facebook. So when people Google and they go on, it's not the fact it's the chairman, it's not the fact it's me. Do we want a website to exist, unmoderated, that accuses people of looking like child abusers? And for me, I've got 5 children, and that is worse than calling me a multi-murderer. So I know I'm going to get a load of abuse on it. My 2 older kids, the 3 younger ones, fortunately, we banned them from accessing social media of any sort. The 2 older kids will no doubt read lots of things that I've got horns growing out of my head and so on. But if we can as a club, and to the fans that are sort of watching this as well as the fans in the room, if we can work together to work out how we have constructive criticism, challenge, people who dislike me express that, no problem with it, but please let's show ARGYLE on social media for what it really is, which is a brilliant family club with proud traditions and great ambition. Anyway, sorry, I've whittled on way too much, and I'm taking up question time, so I'm criticising you, John. You should have kept me in order, but over to you for questions.
Thank you, James. Before I go to the floor, there's a number of questions that have come on the internet, and there's a number of them really that lead on from the news that you just broke around the buyback of the stadium from the council. They've come in from a number of different people, so I'll try and consolidate them. I'm mindful that there's a couple of the authors in the audience, so if I do consolidate and summarise, if any of you need to come back with a bit more detail that I've missed out, please raise your hands afterwards, and I'll pass the microphone to you. First 3 really come from John Lloyd from the internet. And they talk about, and you've touched upon this already, James, but talk around, or just ask questions around whether the balance of ownership will be changed between the owners after the purchase, and then just asking a question around will there be a revaluation of the stadium, which could in turn lead to enhanced value to the individual shareholders.
That's great. In terms of there's no new investors coming in, so it's just the current investors. I will have the same percentage shareholding post the buyback as I've currently got, so there's no change for me. Simon will have a slightly higher shareholding than he's currently got because some of the other investors aren't taking up their rights. The second question in terms of revaluation of the stadium, haven't even thought about it, but and again, not being disrespectful to John, but the revaluation of an asset in the accounts of a company doesn't change the value of the company. The company is valued at what it is. And if we ever sold the company, what people would come in and they'd do their own valuation of what they thought the stadium was worth, what they thought the players were worth, and what they thought the brand was worth. So no plans to revalue, but we haven't discussed it with the accountants. It's just not. But even if we did revalue, it doesn't affect the underlying value to the investors.
Thank you, James. And just on the similar topic, before I hand over to the floor, we've got a number of questions from Dean Eaton, Richard Jones, Paul Thomas, John Lloyd again, which talks around the concerns about if the stadium, or when the stadium returns to club ownership, really what are the safeguards for the future? I've read you one question that from Dean. He says, isn't it possible that at any point the owner of the freehold could decide to charge a rental income, be that yourself or a future third party, from which there may be a risk of increased rental fees above the rent offered by the council? Are there any safeguards to prevent this? And then he gives the context of clubs such as Coventry and the like that have had problems.
Right, well, just again, being absolutely clear for the record, the home park will be bought by Plymouth Argyle Football Club Limited. Company was the one that went into administration. We don't want it bought there. By Plymouth Argyle Football Club Limited. And so it will be owned by it and no one can charge it a rent. Now, clearly what the club might decide to do at a future date, and there's absolutely no plans, I can't see any reason why we would do that, is to sell the stadium again. But if it did that, it would clearly get a free gift of the value of the stadium. So there's no risk of being rentalised when it's owned by Argyle, because if it charged a rent, it would be receiving the rent itself, because it will own the asset. In terms of other models, Coventry from memory, when it got into its difficulty, it was actually the stadium was owned 50% by Coventry City Council and 50% by the Higgs charity. So I don't think Coventry's problems were it was associated with a high rent, but the high rent was charged by the City Council and Higgs. And I don't think it was a high rent. I don't think they were being ripped off. I think it was just a very expensive stadium to build, and that was the rent that they agreed. So I don't think that's... I mean, clearly, you know, there's the Kassam Stadium for Oxford, and not commenting on fair rent or anything, but I think Mr. Kassam charges £500,000 per annum and takes all of the hospitality and commercial revenues, which to me seems like a pretty high rent, but that's clearly not relevant.
Thank you, James. So if we can see a show of hands for anybody that'd like to ask a question, can I ask for your first name, and if you are representing a supporters group, just to let us know who you are representing.
I'm a fan, big fan of Plymouth Argyle. Love the job that Derek Adams does. I read an article this week saying that you were, James, that would be by 2020, the grandstand, there'd be a kind of update on the grandstand. The grandstand would be done, if I'm right.
Well, and again, I'm not going to criticise the Herald, but that article, the front page article in the Herald, was taken from the video that I did that was put on the official screen. And what I said was that, and again, I haven't checked the transcript, but I said that it would be pretty upsetting if we didn't have a new grandstand in place by 2020. I didn't say that I committed to it being built by 2020, and that is one of the slight sort of Chinese whispers games that goes on. I suddenly hear that I said things that I never actually said, but that video is the source of the Herald article. So what I said in that Herald article is absolutely the case, and yeah.
And the other question I've got is, me and my dad are true Plymouth Argyle fans, as I've just said, and we went up just last week before the Exeter game, try and get some tickets for Exeter City, and we got blanked that they weren't being sold for general sale, and we were told
season ticket holders only, yeah. And basically, I'm looking at it this way: if you support Argyle, you should be able to get a ticket to any match, right? Exeter City, we don't stop them coming down here. I know you get an allocation of tickets, right, for Exeter, but for me to go to the ticket office, are you a season ticket holder? If you're not a season ticket holder, you can't have a ticket. To me, that is wrong.
And I feel, sorry to interrupt, James, but I feel that the ticket office are really bang out of order, because, quite be honest, if we are Argyle fans, all of us, if we are Argyle fans, not minding if it's season ticket holders or people that pay on the gate every weekend, we should have a right to go to support our club, to support Derek and the boys when they're away. What's your say on that?
No, I'm clearly totally sympathetic to that. I mean, the challenge that we have, and Martin does a great job in negotiating. You've probably seen that we've taken a bit of their stand, as well as the wonderful, notorious away end with the one loo for 1,000 fans. I mean, the problem is that the club that we're playing with has an obligation to allocate 10% of their capacity. So they can meet their obligation by allocating, what, about 600, 700? It's probably a bit more than that, isn't it? There's about 8,000, I think. Just okay. 8,000. So I mean, they meet their obligation. Sorry.
We come up for tickets, right?
Yeah.
We come up for tickets, they still have tickets left, right? And because we wasn't season ticket holders, they wouldn't give them us.
Yeah.
I think that's wrong.
No, again, this is something which we can... I mean, what we... when we go through the season ticket selling period, we do offer it for general circulation, but the problem with Exeter is that they do... I mean, we sold out all of our allocation at Exeter. They didn't have any left. at the end of that period. Is it fair to give preference to your season ticket holders? Is it right to recognise other people who go to all the away matches, or the people who buy on the door to each home match? I mean, it's a really difficult thing to do, and it's very difficult to police. I mean, the problem is we had, whatever number, 2,500 people that would have wanted to go to that game, and we have 1,600 higher.
Quite low.
Yeah, we had 1,600 tickets to sell, so we need to allocate them some way. I heard from a few people. There were a few of us in the big bank as well. So.
Can I ask, would it be possible to put the sale of season ticket, away match tickets on the website a little bit earlier? Because for Exeter, I've been a season ticket holder for longer than I can remember, but it went on, I think, on 4 o'clock on the day before they sold them. By the time I got down here, they'd all gone.
Can I just come in on the season ticket issue with away fans? The problem we've got 4,300 season ticket holders, and we make a contract with them as part of their intent to buy a ticket to watch every game at the beginning of the season. We say to them that they all have first refusal on tickets for away games and cup games and that type of thing. So that's a contract that we have with them that we have to honour. As far as the tickets being put on sale, we're in the hands of the club that we're visiting. We can only put them on sale when they give them to us. So you will see a variation in timings. We've spoken to Portsmouth this week, and they haven't put the tickets on sale for the game here. So there's a variation in the decision making of different ticket offices as to when they make tickets available. No, I agree. I think the situation is that we put them onto the website as soon as we can. As soon as we've got the tickets available to sell, we will put them on the website. We can't put them on before, because what we've experienced in the past is that we've made an announcement that tickets are going to be available on a certain day. People will come to the ticket office, and we haven't actually received them from the visiting club. So we have to be a bit cautious about the announcement. Off the top of my head, no. But if you want to see me afterwards, I'll take your number and I'll let you know. Okay.
That's personal service, isn't it? When the chief executive will alert you direct.
Okay. Thanks, gents. Just want to go back to the internet questions. We just touched upon the grandstand with the question before that one, but we've got a couple of questions in from John Lloyd and Tim Chown that ask about. Whether or not there have been any discussions with the City Council about taking a partnership approach to the redevelopment of the grandstand, and if there have been discussions, what came of those talks?
Well, we've clearly been in discussions with Plymouth City Council from day one, and as we know, what we're effectively doing now is reversing the transaction that we did with them at that point, where they agreed to buy Home Park for us. That gave us some of the money to settle the football creditor and other debts that we had acquired from the administration period. So we have very, very frequent conversations with the council. They have been incredibly supportive of Plymouth Argyle. I mean, they recognise the value that it has to the city, not just in terms of bringing people into the city and so on, but in terms of the reputation of the city and in terms of the as I say, all of the wonderful work that Argyle and the community does in terms of engagement, education and health. So we speak with the council on an incredibly regular basis. I mean, they need to invest, spend their money in a way which is consistent with law and in a way which meets their priorities as a council. It's hardly as if councils are sort of flush with cash at the moment. So the council has been incredibly supportive, and indeed we are continuing to talk to them as part of the solution for the grandstand.
Thank you, James. One more question from the internet, and then I'll come back to the to the people here. Martin Emerson asks, are there any other options being looked at in order to create a regular income stream for the club by developing the main stand for multiple other business uses?
Now, there's man after my own heart. I mean, absolutely bang on. The challenge that all football clubs have is that they are a venue every 2 weeks during the season, typically, with a few cup games scattered in. So you've got a big asset with lots of people and resource, and it's only used very infrequently. So any grandstand proposal which is approved will have a conference banqueting centre as part of that, and that will be a 7-day-a-week, 52-week-a-year operation. So it will deal with everything from conferences through to weddings, and it'll be subdivisible and also usable as classrooms for Argyle in the community and so on. So absolutely right. The reason for doing the new grandstand is twofold, and we've been consistent with this since day one, is the existing grandstand in its current form is not acceptable as a place for our fans to watch football. We need to improve it. The facilities are not acceptable. So that's one thing. Secondly, we do need to generate additional income. We don't need to generate, we can have a competitive budget in League 2 and League 1 without additional income. But when we get into the Championship, that is a very, very expensive league, and we need to get every button we can to sustain our position in the Championship. So it is really important to us for those two reasons, and it is in that order. As part of both of those, there is evidence that when you provide, all of us got used to sort of coming into the grandstand, not all of us, but into the grandstand as it is, and we're accepting of that. People who want to come and watch football occasionally, or indeed people that are new to the game, won't necessarily settle for the same infrastructure that we currently have. And so as part of that thing, how do we bring families into the club? How do we bring teenagers in? How do we improve the number of women who come in? If we improve the facilities, we will improve that. And as evidence for that, if you look at Hull, for example, when they were struggling at the bottom of League 2, same manager, new stadium 3 miles away, I think, and their attendances went up by 50%. And so even with the same football on offer, people were saying, well, to come in comfort and have a good meal and to have a good pint and nice environment, I will come, whereas I previously wouldn't have come. And as I say, there's plenty of evidence. If you look at Brighton, for example, they were clearly moving up the leagues when they built the Amex stadium, but amazing what you can do if you improve the physical environment. So really, really important. David Felwick to my right probably spent about 20 minutes yesterday at the board meeting castigating me for not moving faster. So duly beaten, we will move as quickly as we can.
Thank you, James. I've got one question at the front, and then I'll try and take other questions in turn then. If you could use the microphone, it will help us with the recording.
Good evening, James. Just a couple of questions for you. Regarding the ownership of the ground, and you're going to get a new grandstand, have you, as the whole, thought about naming rights for the stadium?
Well, we haven't, and for me, there's two names that we don't want subordinated to any other name. We're coming up towards 2020, and the Mayflower Grandstand needs to be the Mayflower Grandstand. This is the founding of modern America. And it's not just founding of modern America, if you look at the US Constitution, it's based on the papers the Mayflower, the Pilgrim Fathers took over on the Mayflower. And if you look at the UN, it is based on that same constitution. So it's really, 2020 is a massive event for the city. And to have the Mayflower Grandstand named anything other than the Mayflower, I think would be wrong. Home Park, it's got to be Home Park. That's got to be what it's known as. Now, if we could find someone to pay us a load of money to invest in the team that didn't subordinate that name, we'd look at it. But I don't think we'd want it to be referred to as anything other than Home Park.
Thank you. And the other question for you is, you were going back about trying to get more women into Home Park, obviously, watch football. I know we've got the Plymouth Argyle ladies team, and they're doing very well, and Martin knows a lot about that. An idea for you is put it towards the board basically next season, when their husbands or their boyfriends get their season tickets, how about doing a cut deal with bringing their wives or girlfriends? Because I see a lot of young females around the back of me today in the Lyndhurst end. Obviously, they like that idea, just keep an eye on their husbands or their boyfriends. But I was just thinking of an idea where you could get your wife to come along, has got an idea. Oh no, if I had my partner, she would want to come and watch the football. But, it's just an idea for you to look at that.
Well, I mean, as a general principle, I think we really do need to think on sort of smart things like that to bring more women in. I mean, clearly not in breach of sexual equality towards men. I don't want men complaining that women get a particularly good deal. But no, I mean, it's a real issue we need to do. But I think a large part of what we need to do is and I think this can be misinterpreted. For me, I supported rugby before I came upon Plymouth Argyle, and I absolutely would be horrified if we ended up with the same spectator experience as rugby. I think and it needs to be, I mean, clearly without violence, without abuse, but the tension between the fans, the tribalism, the pride that people have that this is Plymouth, this is the West Country, this is Cornwall, this is West Devon, is really, really important. So I think we need to keep an edge to that. But I think what we mustn't have is I speak to women and to children who are frightened of coming to Argyle because they think that violence might exist. We don't have it. It's a lovely, loving family. So coming back to the internet stuff, we need to change that shop window, and we need people, when they click on Google Plymouth Argyle, they see what we really are and not this depraved sort of nonsense that they can pick up. Is it? I'm just wondering. In terms of 2020, are you allowed to say anything on that or not? I can say something on that. You're allowed to, are you? Okay. In terms of women? Yes. Okay. I'll pass across.
I attended a meeting at Wembley on Tuesday with Plymouth City Council and the Devon FA, and we are trying to arrange a full women's international between England and the United States to be hosted at Home Park. We're even looking at the possibility of having a women's youth tournament here as well. There's still a lot of work to be done, lots of agreements to be made, but we got a very good reception from Baroness Campbell, who is head of women's football at the FA now, and I'm optimistic that will deliver results for us, not just in terms of the matches in 2020, but also perhaps in terms of facilities and resources.
I mean, what's very interesting in the United States, which is clearly the big focus of 2020, is, I mean, soccer, as they call it, has been massively gaining in popularity at the expense of American football, and a large part of what's driving that is the women's teams. Because they see American football as too violent, and the mums get into playing football, and then they get their kids into playing football, and it gets the next generation, sort of really focused on our sport. So again, there's a really interesting part of this, looking across the pond and working out how the Americans have got that sort of engagement to, we need to grow the next generation of Argyle fans in bigger numbers than we've historically had to reach the ambition that we've got.
Yeah, good evening. Just one question. You keep saying that you want to improve the appearance of the club to outsiders and the visual appearance. My main concern is the lack of what I call general maintenance around the club, i.e. liquor paint here and there. I appreciate, there were more important things in the past, but also things like putting a bit of weed killer down around the edge of the walls, cleaning up, or maybe even putting a screen, the corner of the car park next to the shop and the ticket office, which is the first place that outsiders come to visit this club, and they're met with something that resembles the old Chelsea medal tip. So, that's my point of view. That's the first impression that any new member gets of this club, and it's not very good, is it?
You're 110% right, and we spent about an hour talking about that at the board meeting, and Martin has produced with colleagues a sort of red, amber, green analysis of all the infrastructure requirements. The sort of red that we should crack on with, the amber, which is sort of high importance, and the green, which is nice to have, but for another day. So the board is meeting next month to go through a prioritisation of that, to look at moving forward, and some of that stuff, and it won't surprise anyone who's in the building trade here, some of that stuff will have no visibility to fans, because it is stuff that if we don't do now, there's not a problem with it. For example, quite a lot of work in the horseshoe, that if we don't do it now, it'll cause a real problem for us in 5 years' time. So there's quite a lot of sort of hidden cost over and above the presentational stuff which you mentioned. Peter's colleague did pictures around the grandstand, around the grandstand in particular, to really frighten us by showing it what it looked like. And I thought, well, I do actually see that every other week, and I got it. So.
Great. Thank you, James. We're already on a 10-minute warning. I'm going to give the mic to someone else, but as I do so, it's a question that's come in from our Ed-banging vet, Ed Schillebeer, who asks, in view of rail seat safe standing providing an increased capacity per square yard, which is of potential financial benefit to the club, how soon can fans and players enjoy the prospect of improving the matchday atmosphere, and how many are likely to be installed?
Right. Well, the second one, certainly, the second part of the question is based on the first part, I guess. In terms of rail seating safe standing, the board is absolutely supportive of the concept of that. With the legislation as it currently stands, we cannot put it in place in England. Some of you may know that Celtic has actually put it in, but that's because it's north of the border and isn't subject to the same legislation that we are. We believe that it can be changed with secondary legislation. If it would need to be a change in the Act of Parliament, we just wouldn't get focus on that anytime soon, because the politicians say they're very busy passing other acts. But it can be changed through secondary legislation. So it may be that there is a happy, and may not be, I'm not promising this because I don't control the sort of legislative timetable, but it may be that there is a happy coincidence of timing with the new grandstand and safe standing becoming permissible, and we would certainly look at that. Just in terms of the, there's clearly, when you look at the space availability and how many fans you can put in, there's two things. There's one, how many physically can you put into an area, and there's also what the safety advisory group will accept as the right density of fans for a particular area. And the evidence to date is that where safety advisory groups have looked at this, that they haven't wanted to increase the number of fans per square metre over and above the what you achieve with seating. But we're still keen on it. The obvious place for us is the Mayflower Terrace area.
My question is about concern I have about the buying back of the ground. I accept the financial arguments that you've made, and but my worry is this, and I worried me 10 years ago, or roughly, when the club bought the ground back from the council, and that is that clubs change hands. No ownership is permanent, is it? And I think we all know, history has shown, there are a lot of predatory bad guys looking at football clubs. And I'm afraid we had that experience ourselves. And I just feel that if a club owns its ground, it becomes far more attractive to these predatory bad guys. And I wonder if, the Mast Point crew that nearly wrecked us, if we hadn't owned the ground at that point, would they have been interested?
Well, it's a very sort of reasonable concern to have, and not push that. The circumstances are quite different. I think where we start, and I appreciate this doesn't answer your point, but I'll come back to that. But the previous stadium was bought back with a mixture of monies that have been realised from selling a player and borrowing from a bank to fund it. Whereas what we're looking at doing is putting in, as I say, irredeemable ordinary shares that don't have dividends. So the risk profile is very different to what we're doing, what they did. I haven't done a detailed analysis of all administrations that have happened and near misses and so on, but I don't think there is a correlation that I've seen between ownership of stadium and bad people. And I think you can run the alternative argument that because clubs that own their own freehold are more expensive, you have to have richer bad people, which at least limits the poorer bad people who can't buy it. So you can look locally. I mean, there's a very good example of, I think, success, and I'm going to get myself in trouble here, but sort of relatively less success. If you look down the road at the A38, we have down the road in Exeter, we have a really successful Premier League rugby club, and that rugby club was based on when they sold the old recreation ground where they were tenant, the council let them take a load of the money, and there was quite a lot of pressure on them to put that money into the playing budget. They put 25% into the playing budget, and they spent 75% on Sandy Park. Sandy Park is what, with the great coaching staff as well, but Sandy Park is what's driven that club to finish second in the Premier League last year in rugby. Exeter City has been a tenant of its ground with the city of Exeter as its landlord. I don't think Exeter City is going anywhere with that model that it has. I think the combination of the trust model and lack of ownership of its own asset is a limiter. Now I'm going to get into real trouble here. but yeah, so you can run the argument both ways. If you look at last time that Exeter City got into financial difficulty, it didn't own its grandstand then. If you look at the challenges that our friends at Torquay have got, it doesn't own its own grandstand. It doesn't prevent problems arising. What we've done with the council, and again, this was a real partnership. It wasn't the council insisting or us insisting. We both agreed it was the right thing. When we bought the stadium, we said, let's not just rely on planning limits to ensure that Home Park remains a stadium. Let's actually put a perpetual covenant on it forever. So even if the planning laws change, you could put a Tesco there, you can't do that. And that will survive me, and it could be changed by mutual agreement between the council and the rogue who comes in to build a supermarket on it, but it would need both those parties' consent, and I would hope that those of the Green Army who are still around at the time would push very hard against the council agreeing to that.
Thank you, James. Got one more question from the second row.
James, my only worry about improving the capacity is with parking. It's very tight at the moment, so would you improve the car park?
Wow, no, that's a really good question. I mean, for me, if I'm totally honest, and the residents in the surrounding streets won't agree with this, I think that's what I call a quality problem. I would love to see people having to come to Home Park early because if they don't, they won't get parking. It would be a real sign of success. I mean, in terms of the parking compared to, and I've only followed Argyle while we've been in League Two, so my view of football is a little bit constrained. But we've got some of the best car parking. We've got about 850 car parking spaces surrounding the stadium. We have to share that with the Life Centre, a wonderful host today, and park walkers and so on. But it's fairly well provided compared to other stadia in League Two. Hopefully next season I'll be able to tell you what it compares to League One.
More buses.
More buses. He's being mischievous, are you, David?
No, I'm saying that's how we used to do it. So, and I think the bigger the crowd and the more you can rely on filling buses, and buses would come.
Thank you, James. I'm very mindful of time, so we're just going to try and squeeze a quick couple more points in. We did have an email from Nigel Rick asking about the Peter Hartley Wembley pilgrimage giveaway. If I could just quickly answer that one, because I think we can resolve that. We did drop the ball on that, but I've spoken to my colleagues in the club, and we are already sorting that out. So that is in hand.
I mean, my personal apologies for that, because it was my idea and I didn't follow it up. So I take responsibility for it. This was where we agreed to, we offered a prize for the 5 people, I think, who had made the most effort to get to Wembley. And we haven't done a prize for that because we forgot about it. So apologies to the 5 winners once those are identified. But we'll publish that.
Thank you, James. This is going to need a very truncated response, but we've got a couple of questions that came in before the EFL meeting this week and before the club issued its statement on the whole game solution. But got questions from Mark Colling and Ian Dallar really asking around what we think of the credibility of the proposals and what our approach and response is.
It's really worrying when the club secretary tries to get the chairman fined, isn't it? So I'll be.
Well, the club secretary was there. He could answer it.
The club secretary can answer it, and he can get fined.
He was at the meeting.
Yeah. No. I mean, our position as a club, I think, is we've made it very clear to the English Football League, and we put out a press release when we put the initial response in, that we do not think their proposals are in the interests of football clubs in the lower divisions, Plymouth Argyle, or indeed we think championship clubs. So we've been very clear that we don't agree with those proposals. The revised press release that came out, I think it could have been read as if the clubs had voted on it and were supportive of the revised proposals. The clubs did not vote on it. They were briefed. I didn't go to the meeting, Martin and John did. They were briefed on the proposals, and then the press release was put up. We continue to be unhappy with what's called the whole game solution, and we don't think that's in the interest of the club. Now, what I would say, which balances out a little bit, is I'm very, very mindful that I don't want anyone to think that Plymouth Argyle is anti-Premier League, or that it is it's against change. So really, really supportive of the English Football League to carry on thinking creatively of ways in which they can improve the sport for our fans, that they can generate additional revenues to invest in the club. You know, really positive about them carrying on thinking, but the whole game solution doesn't work in our view.
Thank you, James. Just take one quick question, then we must make way for wheelchair dancing.
Just a final quick question about income to the club. If Conor Hurahan gets a transfer from Barnsley, would the club benefit in any way from any transfer fee?
If Conor was sold, by Barnsley, yes.
Maybe in the January transfer window.
Yeah. We've got, I think, a total of 10 add-ons and sell-ons on.
Multiple add-ons and sell-ons.
Yeah. So yes. Yeah.
Okay, ladies and gents, it's 6:25 now, and so we're going to have to pack up and leave. But Chairman, would you like to conclude the meeting?
Yeah, I just say thank you very much. You know, these meetings, I think, are really, really important to the club. I mean, you know, you should hold the board to account. You should hold me to account. You should provide challenge to us, and these are not onerous on us. These are things we really welcome. And thank you to everyone for coming in person that's managed to make it. Thanks to everyone who bothers to watch this afterwards, and you know, keep your challenges and questions coming. You know, we as a club want to be a club that executes continuous improvement. If we got to the top of the Premier League, we would want to get better again, and it's really important that I think our supporters keep that expectation going, not of getting to the top of the Premier League, but of each year getting better than we were the year before. So, you know, please keep that keep that coming. Thank you very much, Steve, for coming today. And if I can also thank the management for the Life Centre for making this facility available. What would be really helpful to us, I think, is in terms of the time of the meeting and the venue. Is this better or worse than the Fans First? Sorry, not the Fans First, but the tent. It's worse. Okay. Well, it could. Is it possible just to have a bit of feedback on that and just see whether that is the consensual? Sorry. A show of hands then. That's people who came. Who thinks that this is better than doing it in the morning before? Great. And who thinks it's worse? All right. I'm sorry.
We'll get you a coffee.
Okay. If you could tell us how we could make it better for you within the context of this, that's great. But thank you very much indeed, everyone, for coming. Thank you.